Good evening and welcome to Englishisfun sessions once again. Today we'll talk about a simple yet beautiful poem, Rain on the Roof by Coates Kinney, who was an American poet. He was born in New York in 1826. He was believed to be a man who had lived his life to the fullest. He was a lawyer, he was a politician and a journalist, apart from being a poet. In fact, his most famous poem is Rain on the Roof. In this poem, he talks about the various thoughts that flash through his mind on hearing the pitter-patter of the rain. Let's look at the poem and try and understand the meaning of the poem stanza by stanza. This is the first stanza. When the humid shadows hover over the starry spheres and the melancholy darkness gently sweeps in rainy tears, what a bliss to press the pillow of a cottage chamber bed and lie listening to the patter of the soft rain overhead. The expression humid shadows here refers to dark clouds, the dark rain-bearing clouds, and the word hover means to circle around the same spot, much like bees hovering around a single flower. So over here he says, the dark clouds hover over the starry spheres. That here the reference is to the night sky covered with all these stars. So these dark clouds cover these stars and there is a creation of darkness. The darkness creeps in and it is melancholic. The word melancholy means sadness or sad. So the darkness that is created, it adds further gloom to the atmosphere. And this darkness in its sadness weeps in the form of raindrops as tears. Although the stanza begins in a somber sort of mood, somber, S-O-M-B-R-E, somber means sad. Although it is sad in the beginning, in the very first stanza, the spirits change. The spirit is uplifted by the poet when he says, what a bliss to press the pillow of a cottage chamber bed. Cottage chamber, cottage reference is to his house, chamber is to his room, and here the reference to the bed in a room in his house. So he's referring to his bedroom. So the poet, when he lies down on his bed and presses his head against the pillow, he feels a sense of bliss. Notice the sentence structure, what a bliss. That is an exclamatory sentence, and exclamations are used in heightened emotions, and here the emotion is happiness with reference to bliss. Bliss means extreme happiness. And when does he feel this extreme happiness? As he lies on his bed, head pressed against his pillow, he lies listening to the patter of the rain as it falls on the roof of his bedroom. Let's move to the second stanza. Every tinkle on the shingles has an echo in the heart, and 1,000 dreamy fancies into busy being start, and 1,000 recollections weave their air threads into woof, as I listen to the patter of the rain upon the roof. Tinkle is the light metallic sound that is heard, for example, when a metal spoon falls on the floor. And shingles are tiles that are used to make roofs. Let me show you a picture of shingles. This is how a picture of the shingles look. So these shingles are used to make roofs. And here the poet says that every raindrop that falls on these shingles or tiles is like an echo in the heart of the poet. That means repeated sounds because of the pitter-patter of the rain that creates 1,000 bits of imagination. 1,000 whims. Fancies are whims or pieces of imagination in his otherwise preoccupied mind. That's why he says busy being, where he refers to the mind being constantly busy with something or the other in this modern world. The poet also dreams that these invisible threads of imagination in the air that he weaves into wefts which he can see with his mind's eye. We know that air threads don't exist in reality, so this is nothing but his imagination that these 1,000 recollections weave into the wefts. Let me show you a picture of the weft. Now in your class, grade 6 and 7, you must have read a chapter, Fiber to Fabric, in your science class, where you have learnt that every fabric is nothing but a crisscross of threads, one the warp and the other the weft. The warp is the horizontal thread and the vertical thread, and the weft is the horizontal thread. Notice how the weft forms into S shapes and it winds along the warp, and that's how it forms the fabric. The poet so beautifully imagines how these recollections weave themselves into threads that form the weft in the fabric of his imagination. And when does this happen? This happens when he listens to the patter of the rain upon the roof. That is, when he is lying down in his bed, head rested against his pillow, and he hears the light pitter-patter of the rain falling on the roof of his bedroom. Let's now move on to the third stanza. Now in memory comes my mother, as she used in years agone, to regard the darling dreamers, ere she left them till the dawn. Oh, I feel her fond look on me, as I list to this refrain, which is played on the shingles by the patter of the rain. In this stanza, the poet talks specifically about the memory of his mother. In the previous stanza, he talked about 1,000 recollections of past memories. Now he's being more specific and he talks about the particular memory of his mother coming to have a look at her children, her darling children, the darling dreamers, reference being made to the children, that is the poet and his siblings, that his mother would come and tuck into bed at night. The word agone means in the past, in the years gone by. So this is a memory of his mother coming to tuck her children, her darling children, to bed and make sure that they are completely safe and sound and asleep, and leave them there until she comes back to wake them in the morning. Again, the second part, a little bit of regret. Notice the exclamatory mark and the expression oh. There is a sense of sadness, a tinge of sadness and regret over there, because the mother is not there anymore. But her memory is still very strongly with him, and he feels he can even feel her fond look on him as he listens. The word list is short for listen, and he listens to this refrain. A refrain is a part of a song that keeps repeating, the important part of the song that keeps repeating. And here the reference is to the repeating sound of the pitter-patter falling on the roof, creating a musical note. And all this he feels when this music replays in his mind because of the continuous pitter-pattering of the rain on the roof of his room. This is the poem. Let's go on to the figurative devices. We'll go stanza by stanza. In the first stanza, in the very first line, you find humid shadows, and I mentioned to you right at the start of the explanation that humid shadows refer to the dark rain-bearing clouds, and hence it is metaphorical. Humid and hover in the same line also forms an alliteration. If you look at the rhyme scheme is A, B, C, B, D, E, F, E. and the same rhyme scheme follows in each of the stanzas. You notice that the second and the fourth line rhyme and the sixth and the eighth line rhyme. So when you actually notice the poem, there's a certain rhythm. You find the rhythm of the raindrops, the pitter patter, when the humid shadows hover over all the starry spheres and the melancholy darkness gently weeps in rainy tears. Notice there is a pitter patter rhythm to it. And then starry spheres, that is also an alliteration. The beginning sounds the repeated S sound at the beginning. So that is a representation of the alliteration here. You also see cottage chamber and lie listening. So quite a lot of alliteration in this stanza. And then you have something called a transferred epithet. An epithet is nothing but an adjective. A transferred epithet is when an adjective is used against a noun, but the reference is actually to another noun. For example, melancholy darkness. The word melancholy means sad, so you hear the adjective is against darkness. Darkness cannot be sad, but here the darkness is attributed a certain feeling, that is a certain emotion of sadness, and the adjective describing sadness has been used only to emphasize the fact that it's people who become melancholic. It's not the darkness which becomes melancholic. And then of course I can give you an example of a everyday situation. We always say it's a wonderful day. So that's a perfect example of a transferred epithet. When the day cannot be wonderful, the day cannot be bad, the day is as it is every day, day after day. But it's the people that experience something good or bad, and because this particular individual experienced something good, he feels or she feels it is a wonderful day. And then there is personification. If you continue reading the same line, and the melancholy darkness gently weeps in rainy tears. So darkness doesn't have the ability to weep. The action of weeping is a human action. It's an action of a living being, and hence personification being given to darkness. And then of course you have this expression, what a bliss, which is an exclamatory sentence which shows heightened emotions. And then the other point that I have to talk to you about is onomatopoeia, the sound words, and the sound word that is mentioned over here is the patter, the pitter patter of the rain, the sound of the rain falling on the roof. We move to the second stanza. Again, we begin with onomatopoeia, the tinkle and the patter, both words are onomatopoeic. We have personification. Here the personification is of the 1,000 recollections. So here you see 1,000 recollections weave their air threads. Weaving here is a verb, and this is again the action of a living being, a human being. And hence the recollections are personified. You also find onomatopoeia here, like I told you before, in the tinkles and the We now move to the next stanza, and let's talk about the figurative devices in this stanza. Notice the rhyme scheme is the same like I said in the first stanza. The second line and the fourth line rhyme, and the sixth line and the eighth line rhyme. Coming to the figurative devices, we look at onomatopoeia. There are two words, tinkle and patter, which are onomatopoeic. We have alliteration, which is busy being. We also have personification, where 1,000 recollections weave their air threads into woof. So here weave is a verb, and here it is a human action, hence the recollections have been personified. You also have the transferred epithet, where the noun is fancies representing whims or fantasies or imagination, and imagination can't be dreamy. It's people who dream, and that's why it is a transferred epithet. We also have inversion here, and 1,000 dreamy fancies into busy being start. It should have been 1,000 dreamy fancies start inside the busy being. So there is an inversion also, which we notice over here. That's about the figurative devices in the second stanza. Let's go on to the third stanza. Again, in the third stanza, you have patter of the rain, which is onomatopic. You also have the exclamatory mark over here, which is an indication of the tinge of sadness or regret in the mind, in the heart of the poet, because he feels the pain at the loss of his mother, but then he's able to move on. He's still able to recollect only fond memories of his mother. There's no lingering sadness about negative memories or something which affects him in a sad way. Here, the sadness is only because she's not there anymore. But now, the healing power of the rain has been able to help him to uplift his spirit, and despite the sadness which is going to stay with him all his life, he's able to move on. So that brings me to the central idea of the poem, or the theme of the poem, which is the healing power of nature, which is the healing power of the raindrops in this case. And the alliteration is in the very first line, memory, my mother. And of course, you also have another example of alliteration here, the darling dreamers, which is the reference to the dear or the darling children of the mother. This is about the figurative devices. I hope this helps. Have a good day.